there's another piece too to the sort of Ecuador story that I think is interesting when you're comparing it to, its neighbors and the other regional players, because Ecuador had something like, I always forget the exact numbers, but it was something like 7 different presidents in 9 years or something like that. Basically, people would get upset, they'd march on the Capitol, and they'd stay there until the president resigned, right? So, and that this went on over and over again up until 2006. Since 2006, Ecuador has had political stability. Again, there's not to say that all that time has been great politically, but it had stability that entire time. Prior to that, in 1999-2000, Ecuador's currency collapsed and they dollarized after that. So really, you can make the argument, well, and to throw infrastructure into that too. So Ecuador started spending on infrastructure in earnest in 2006. Before that, like the area that we're in, you used to have to walk south of here. Like you couldn't drive south of where we are right now. Now there's a highway, right? Like a legitimate highway, internet, everything. The infrastructure in Ecuador is A+. Not in every section of the country. There's certainly some areas on the coast and other places where it's not as good, but in the vast majority of the country, nearly everywhere, it's really A+. Internet speeds everywhere. I mean, just a hilarious anecdote on that. There's a guy that we work with who's in Chicago right now. We've had 1 million Zoom calls, and it's his internet that keeps
Really?
causing problems.
It's not South America. That's crazy.
Right, exactly. I keep joking with him, like, you got to get out of that third world country and come down here where they have some good infrastructure.
Oh yeah, right. Third world countries. It's like, in what sense, right? I mean, the whole concept of like first, second, and third world countries is very like outdated, and I don't think people understand it that well. But yeah, some second world countries, like compared to first world countries, it's like on certain statistics, I think that needs to be like like ranking of countries. And yeah, but it's fascinating. I mean, the lifestyle in Ecuador, and that's something they actually have a retreat coming up in Vilcabamba, which is mid-July, correct?
16th, yep.
Yeah, July 16th. So yeah, I mean, the lifestyle there. Do you want to talk a little bit about that in Vilcabamba, like the natural, everything that goes on there? It's amazing.
Yeah, Ryan, why don't you jump into that? I just really quick, I just want to finish that last point, which is just that Ecuador was not investable prior to 2006, and you could really even make the argument after that, until the infrastructure really became good enough. So you had the monetary instability, political instability, and lousy infrastructure. We've only had those three things in investable grade, so to speak, since I would argue 2010, right around there. So we've had less than 15 years of development in earnest in some of the more rural parts. And that is a difference, I think, between Ecuador and some of these other countries in Latin America, which is interesting for me as someone who's sort of a contrarian investor and somebody who looks to be early on things. It's really interesting here from that perspective. So Vilcabamba specifically for people, and if you look up Vilcabamba on the internet, you'll read all kinds of weird stuff too. But you'll also read some interesting stories and anecdotes. It's known as the Valley of Longevity. There was people here that were studying sort of ancient people years ago, trying to figure out, are they actually living to be 120 and plus? And I don't know if any of that is true or not, but it's attracted a really fascinating sort of energy and group of people to this valley, that if you're someone, I think, who's concerned about the state of the world, you're going to be in very good shape here, both for all the things that we mentioned, but also because everybody here knows what's going on and isn't going to allow any too much weirdness to take place. There's really a legitimate power base here in that. And there's also just, over the last 2 or 3 years, there's just been this sort of influx of really accomplished, amazing, high level, powerful in their own way, powerful people who have descended here and just made the valley into just such a cool place to live. I'm so grateful that I live here. Ryan mentioned the natural health practitioners. I always say this line to people who ask me, there has to be a higher ratio of healers to population than anywhere else in the world. I mean, and most of these people are very accomplished. These are people who sort of run training centers all over Europe, or, tour the world. They're kind of famous in their niche. So it's really is an interesting little valley. It's not, 8,000 people, maybe something like that. It's not a, not a big place, a little rural town in Ecuador, but very cool place to live.
Definitely. And the community aspect is huge, right? It's because especially, where the world's moving to, that you need to have people around you that are like that. And I think something outside of the city is always important. That's, for me is looking at different places to own land around the world. So you have different places you can go, but you don't want to you want to have a community near you. And that's what's awesome about Vilcabamba is, if you wanted to, there's a lot of land in that area where you can purchase it a little bit out of the city, and the drive isn't really that bad. So
that's right.
There's and where you're building your house currently, is it pretty far out of Vilcabamba?
About 5 minutes, so not far.
5 minutes. That's awesome.
It's just far enough out that you're not in Vilcabamba downtown.
Nice.
And you're in a rural setting, but yeah, you just pop on the highway and head into town.
That's incredible. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like here in Lima, for example, it's just such a congested city, and I was I'd never taken the public transport here. I've almost been in Peru for a month, and sadly today was my first time experiencing it. And it's, so packed, and I was, listening to something and kind of thinking about all the shortages. And when you're in a city and something like this happens, truly, it's the last place you want to be. I think a lot of people don't realize, especially in the US, the Great Depression is kind of the closest kind of example of this. But when you don't know the context of it in recent times, it's kind of strange. So I think it's just interesting to see these kind of countries around the world that are slowly kind of deteriorating, and especially places where you see kind of crumbling infrastructure, you see higher prices and everything, and and having something like a plan B set up before you need it is very important, I think.
I mean,
that's right.
The other interesting thing about here too, it's, we're mentioning Vilcabamba, that's where we're sort of based out of. Land in Vilcabamba comparably is not cheap, right? It's a very popular place, Vilcabamba, Malacatos, these valleys. But if you are looking for that sort of larger, more plan B type option, not that you can't do that here, of course you can, or agriculture, more specifically, agricultural opportunities. Again, there's still large swaths of this country where nobody's doing anything. And the growing conditions are A+, literally. I was just visiting an area recently where we're looking at a larger agricultural project where, it gets 13 hours of sun, 365 days a year. There's no clouds in the sky. It's hot during the day. I visited down there a papaya farm, avocado farm, a grape vineyard. I had very little time actually that day, but unbelievable what they're producing. And most of that entire region, nobody's doing anything. Like, most of the land is undeveloped. There's a handful of people, doing awesome stuff. And I reviewed all the numbers. The numbers are unbelievable on a lot of it. People are, on some of the higher grossing stuff, people are grossing between about $20,000 and $50,000 per hectare of crops there. And most of that land is, it's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 a hectare, and it's flat, right? These are areas that, not football field flat, but for Ecuador, very, very flat. No mountains, just little rolling kind of, just little hills like that, very little.
Wow.
A lot of people are reaching out looking for information, right? So we thought, why don't we just do a Vilcabamba lifestyle retreat, right? So it's actually being held, the first one, July 16th through the 23rd. The idea is basically come down and we'll show you what it's like to live here. We're going to get you connected with the community. We're going to have you try out all of the great restaurants. We're going to take you out for adventure. We're going to show you real estate properties. We're going to show you and let you tour other farming, agricultural projects, different gardens that are exquisite in the area. Let you meet all of the natural health practitioners that reside here, because there are a lot of them. This area is known for natural health and wellness, right? A lot of the people who came here originally were all about that. So we're just kind of taking it from there, letting people come. And from there, you can make a decision on whether you want to relocate to this region. So that's the whole concept. And we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So I think boots on the ground, it's something like that is so important because the amount of online research, if you're in the US and you're in Canada and you're looking at getting another place and you're doing all this online research, you can watch endless videos, but I think actually going there and experiencing it is so much different. So yeah, anyone who's interested, that it'll be on July 16th, their retreats, and I'll actually probably be attending, most likely, hopefully, if I can make it out of July in time. But yeah, it should be interesting. And I think again, something like that is so important to meet the locals and actually like fully understand what the lifestyle is really like, because you can have some idea in your head about what it's going to be when you get there. But yeah, there's so many pros to Ecuador, and I think that, like you said, the US dollar thing is actually a huge point. In Panama, they also have it. But as far as South America goes, I think that's the only country. Venezuela actually right now is running on US dollars and bolivars.